Okay. Oh my gosh. All right, Ephraim, here we go. We're going to get this right. This is a doozy. Scholars, we're looking at you. Pull up a chair. Here we go. We're going to drop this in our Psalm series, and this is going to be Psalm 78, which I lovingly refer to as the Babylonian fuckery Psalm. This is not just an academic rigor when you look at Psalm 78. This is spiritual malpractice on a grand scale and on a major level. And shame on you, every scholar and rabbi out there. And Christian preacher, too, because they know, but they should know better if they went to seminary. In other words, they're lying. And as soon as you accept the fact that everyone from the Roman Church, Paul beyond, all the Catholic Paul people, and all the Protestants that adopted Paul, the Romans lied to you. Okay? Then, if you can accept, and so did the Jews, because they came back from Babylon, Persia, and edited a bunch of shit. So all these people leaving Rome and running to the rabbis, yeah, you're not auditing Babylon, guys. You're not auditing Babylon. They did the same thing Rome did. They lied to you. Then you realize that. Then you accept that, well, so are the scholars, because they have to sell books and get funding for their seminaries and their universities. They're not going to tell you the truth. They're lying too. They all know, and they're all lying. Because if we can figure this out, certainly they can. Or maybe not. Maybe this is just for remnant sheep and not all the academic dipshits. That would be Luke 10. We call it the dumbass protocol in Luke 10, where Jesus says, yeah, this information wasn't given to the priesthood. This information wasn't given to the learned, scholared, fancy people. This information is given to the dumbasses. So we're on the Luke 10 dumbass protocol, wondering, why don't any of these people know what the hell's going on? Hi, and welcome to our Bible study channel.
Energy. Energy. You cannot fuck with this. Energy. You cannot fuck with this energy. Love to all those in the session. All of those who are listening. Don't miss the message, judging me. You cannot fuck with this energy. Energy.
These are videos that go pretty in depth. First thing you should probably do is pause and read our 12 rules for reading biblical text. And if you don't like the 12 rules or you don't understand the 12 rules, well, I don't have time to explain them all. Go back to the book that I wrote and uploaded on this channel, which takes you through the entire arc and how we made these quote-unquote 12 rules as a framework of what we found after 7 years digging meticulously and carefully through the text. So if you're confused, go do that. If I refer back, well, that's probably because we actually post these things in order. So they're all done in series. And if you jump in at the middle of a series without any schema or background knowledge, and you get all pissed off, well, that's also not our problem. This is a group where we go line by line, scroll by scroll through the text. Warning, we are not language sensitive, so if you can't handle some cussing, it's not the place for you. We also do not endorse nor approve of pretty much any mainstream theology. So if you're looking for that, also definitely not the place for you. We do a video about the characters that we use in our Bible study series. And the reason we do this is sort of so that they can kind of get in your head. So we do have a video explaining why we chose the people we chose and how their sort of energy characteristics go along with the biblical characters to modernize it for people so they know what the heck we're reading. Clearly, the Roman Church was not doing their job and looking for the lost sheep of the reunited House of David. So that's what we're doing. Okay. We're taking that away from them because they screwed it up. The brilliant rabbis also down there in Babylon are also not looking for the lost sheep of the reunited kingdom of David. So you're not going to hear, let's follow Rome. And you're not going to hear, let's follow the rabbis on this channel. Because, you know, sorry, not sorry, but the Bible wasn't actually written for the corrupt Levitical priesthood post-Babylon and Persia to read it through their little janky books. And it also wasn't written to be read through the eyes of pagan 4th century church fathers. So we're not doing that either. You guys can both have a seat. Oddly enough, the Bible also wasn't written to be read through the eyes of some dumbass scholars with pieces of paper that say they're smarter than everyone, but have never seen a Davidic covenant in their life. Not written for them either. You know who it's written for? It's written for the reunited house of David, who are actually in covenant and are actually the sheep. That's who it's written for. That's why nobody else can understand what the heck's going on. What you are going to hear is what you're supposed to hear, which is, let's follow the king. And let's get started.
So, we are going to war.
And wait till you get a load of this one. Now, we are strategically dropping this in the middle. We've paused in our Luke series. I think, I don't know, like Luke 3, 4, we're in there somewhere. We're just getting started. We did one introduction where we sort of overviewed the setting in Acts 9:1 in Paul's paganisms. And we haven't dropped a psalm in a really long time. So we're going to go ahead and do this. Now, we also did a fan mail series, a new installment there, where we're talking about, yeah, you didn't really get the Abrahamic covenant, sit down. Okay, there's that. And we did a please stop calling Jesus Jewish one. So if you haven't seen all those, this might be out of context. But if you've seen all those, which are the most recent things we dropped, you'll see how this is going to tie up some of those ends together. In one of those videos, let's even see. I think it was fan mail episode 9. Let me see if I can share that screen instead. Here's this lovely one. Share this tab instead. Yeah, we did this one, which is fan mail episode 9. And it goes through your curse for not blessing the Jews, God's chosen people. That's a fun one. We also did one recently that I kind of want to point out here, just because it's important. It's important for the context. It's important for the context. We also went through Luke 4a. Let's go there. And this one is called Luke 4a. Stop calling Jesus Jewish or Judah Jewish or Israel Jewish, because Ephraim's back. And we're going to start there. And you guys, I feel like I am literally by myself out here literally dragging Ephraim by the hair back to their covenant.
Kind of a stranger, never wanna give me no shade. Never wanna be like Bob, working for the boss every night. Hey, need a love, keep me happy. Need a love, yeah, won't you keep it? Yeah, won't you keep it?
The bitch slapping me like, hey guys, hello, over here. I'm gonna do, you have the covenant, hello, but they're, nobody listens. All right, so with that in mind, those are just a few to get you started on some background knowledge. I also recommend the entire Meet Ephraim series. If you haven't seen that, you'll see where this is going. And of course, we mentioned this bloodline mess in the book. But that's neither here nor there. Let's go for it today. All right, reminders. Now I'm going to run down this quick list of reminders. And if you're hearing this for the first time, you're not being reminded, well, go to the channel. We do these in order. So Genesis 48 is actually where the Abrahamic covenant is handed down to Joseph, or through Joseph, to his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay, that's what happens. Then Genesis 49, all the other sons are getting their blessing. So Jacob adopts Ephraim and Manasseh, who are Joseph's sons, skips over Joseph and goes right to them and gives them the Abrahamic covenant. So Jacob isn't just blessing them in Genesis 48. And if you go to your preachers, your lion preachers, what they're going to focus on, they're not going to say, hey guys, this is the Abrahamic covenant in Genesis 48. They're not going to tell you that. Okay? What they're going to do is go, oh, he crossed his hands. And they're going to focus in on this little part about the hand crossing blessing, where Ephraim, the younger, gets the bigger blessing, and he's blessed like the older, which is a biblical pattern anyway. And they're going to go off and talk about that ad nauseum. What they're not going to tell you is that Judah never got a covenant. Okay, they're not going to say that. The other thing they're not going to say is the janky-ass Levite priesthood coming home from Babylon, calling themselves Jews. Yeah, they didn't get a covenant either. The Abrahamic covenant goes to Ephraim. Now, interestingly, they take it away from him later. The Bible doesn't. They do. And that's what we're going to learn a little bit about today. But as a quick recap, in Genesis 48, what you'll see is Jacob's on his deathbed. Okay. And at the very top of the page, you have to read the whole page in context. Top of Genesis 48, what's going on is Jacob is babbling, like, think of old dude on the deathbed, right? And he's babbling about his beloved wife, Rachel. Rachel is his beloved wife, not Leah. He was forced to marry Leah, but he never loved her. Okay. The beloved was Rachel. And Rachel's the one who birthed Joseph and Benjamin. We've gone through this in the Meet Ephraim series. Go there. Leah, the wife he was forced to marry, birthed, among others, Judah and Levi. So when I say Rachel's sons versus Leah's sons, this is what I'm talking about. They're all sons of Jacob. And the covenants go through the patriarchal lineage, period. Sorry, feminists, it goes to the men. But girls, here's where you come in. There is an often ignored beloved wife protocol where the covenants that are passed through the male bloodline are also and always passed through the male and his beloved wife. Not a concubine, not some janky-ass pagan chick like Tamar getting janky and doing weird shit. It's through the beloved wife. It doesn't matter if she's in the tribe or if she's pagan. Now, there's a warning about that. We've talked about this before. They don't want you marrying foreign wives, not because they're foreign, but because they're going to force you or seduce you into worshiping other gods. But if that foreign hoochie wife is loyal to your covenant-bearing son, then she's clear. That's the pattern. Okay. That's the protocol or the pattern that we're seeing. So the men carry the covenants through the bloodline, and they birth the heir, the male heir, through the beloved wife, not the janky ass Leah wife. Sorry, not sorry. So you're seeing Jacob, back to Genesis 48. You're seeing him on his deathbed. He's lamenting the loss and how he lost Rachel on the side of the road, and she was buried on the side of the road on the way to Ephrath. Then Joseph comes in with the boys. He hands down the Abrahamic covenant. He blesses the sons. And you'll see it's the only place where the patriarchs are named in a blessing, and all three parts of the Abrahamic covenant are handed down in a blessing. So this is what it is, guys. And then at the bottom of the page, he talks about this piece of land that he's also giving them as the inheritance. Well, that's the land inheritance of the Abrahamic covenant. And what land is that? Well, you know, all your Judah-centric Levi psycho rabbis are going to be like, that's not true. But what was he talking about at the beginning of the page in context? Oh, Rachel's burial site on the road to Ephrath. And then he suddenly gives them land at the end after the Abrahamic, as he's blessed them in the Abrahamic covenant. It's the same freaking land. Okay. This land happens to be in the kingdom of Judah, or what's going to be Judah, right? Because there was no Judah at the time Jacob's giving this blessing. So what's going to become the southern kingdom? Well, this land is in that southern kingdom, but it's not of the bloodline Judah. They don't run it. It's from the Abrahamic covenant given to Ephraim. So the people of that little slice of land within the boundaries of Judah are bloodline Ephraim, Rachel's sons, and they're referred to as Ephrathites. That's why David, Elimelech, all these dudes, oh, Bethlehem Ephrathah, out of you will come one to rule, all that shit. David's an Ephrathite. That is talking about Rachel's burial site on the way to Ephraim, on the way to Ephrath, from the bloodline Ephraim that was given that covenant of tiny slices of land within the bounds of Judah, but not of the bloodline of Judah in Genesis 48. That would be your Abrahamic covenant remnant bloodline. They are, notice, very separated from all the dipshits of Ephraim up in the north. God does that. He saves a remnant. He pulls them aside. He plops them into somewhere else. And that somewhere else happens to be Judah. And Judah happens to get eaten by Babylon and trained by Babylon. Judah is not the lion, guys. That's where we get to Genesis 49. Judah ain't no lion. Judah is a cub. Lion cubs don't rule. Lions do. And we're going to break that down and recast this in Genesis 49 and see how they're getting janky with the sleight of hand there the next time. We've also got Revelation 5:5, which says, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David's overcome, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, sorry. Greek articles show that the root of David is not the same subject. It's the Lion of Judah. Sorry. Wah, wah, wah. So the Lion of Judah, guys, is Babylon. The root of David would not be his descendant. It would be the originator of David. Well, who's the originator of David? If you're not in glamored Rome, lunatic, Hellenistic logos theory with this entity, this magical entity thing, well, that would be Adam. Adam is humanity. So look, Babylon, Adamic humanity overcame. Now here comes Jesus trotting in with the scroll because he's the one that reversed the contract of death at the garden. So there's that. We did this Revelation 5:5 breakdown in the Greek on already in plenty of videos. Go find that. I think we even have a short that goes over it in the Greek. Then we've got Micah. Out of you, Bethlehem Ephrathah will come one. We go over this and we're going to hit that again. But it's not a GPS, guys. It's not Jesus has to like come out of Bethlehem. We did this in Luke. It's about seed. It's about genealogy. It's about being David's patriarchal covenant heir, not like stick a GPS on Jesus and make sure he's born in Bethlehem under a star. Like, that's not what make us saying, okay? It's a seed of David. It's DNA. It's a covenant scroll, promise, covenant, not a GPS. If Jesus has the seed of David, he could be born in New Jersey, according to Micah. We break that down too, but we'll do that again next time. And then the only other reference we have to this Judah thing, Judah's right to rule, is in Hebrews. And oh boy, the book of Hebrews is a mess. We haven't gotten there yet. We're going to shelf that. But let's just be clear. If the only thing you have for this Judah supremacy narrative you've got going on is Hebrews, you're in a lot of trouble. Let's just say that.
Never got a flash out of cocktail. Crying on this the flesh of a bone. Never got a lift out of lead jet, baby. When I can fly, way back home. I need a love to keep driving. I need a love, baby.
So, those are all the places that scholars, Christians, rabbis, the whole lot of them, all of them, point to say, no, it's Judah. Yeah, well, we're going to find something out today that dismisses that. So we've already got those arguments counterclaimed, counter-argued in old videos, but we'll go through them again and we'll go through them deeper, perhaps the next time. This time, here's our agenda. We're just going to read through Psalm 78. We're going to ask, who the heck is this guy? What in the world is that word? How did this whole psalm end up into a covenant reroute? Which God are they talking about here? What does removing the bound mean? And some arguments over dating, a genealogy audit, a Caleb and Joshua mess, and your proof is the Essenes, scholars? We're going to look at all that today. It's a lot, guys. We are chock full. This is not just an academic rigor when you look at Psalm 78. This is spiritual malpractice on a grand scale and on a major level. And shame on you, every scholar and rabbi out there. And Christian preacher too, because they know, but they should know better if they went to seminary. In other words, they're lying. And as soon as you accept the fact that everyone from the Roman Church, Paul beyond, all the Catholic Paul people, and all the Protestants that adopted Paul, the Romans lied to you. Okay? Then, if you can accept, and so did the Jews, because they came back from Babylon, Persia, and edited a bunch of shit. So all these people leaving Rome and running to the rabbis, yeah, you're not auditing Babylon, guys. You're not auditing Babylon. They did the same thing Rome did. They lied to you. Then you realize that. Then you accept that, well, so are the scholars, because they have to sell books and get funding for their seminaries and their universities. They're not going to tell you the truth. They're lying too. They all know, and they're all lying. Because if we can figure this out, certainly they can. Or maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe this is just for remnant sheep and not all the academic dipshits. That would be Luke 10. We call it the dumbass protocol in Luke 10, where Jesus says, yeah, this information wasn't given to the priesthood. This information wasn't given to the learned, scholared, fancy people. This information is given to the dumbasses. So we're on the Luke 10 dumbass protocol, wondering, why don't any of these people know what the hell's going on? Or they're lying. So here we go. Here's what they did. Here's what they did, guys, with Psalm 78. They invented a narrator, Asaph, I don't know how you say it, Asaph. We're going to call him Asaph on this channel. They smeared Ephraim, who is the covenant-bearing heir of not only the Abrahamic covenant, Genesis 48, but the Davidic covenant as well, because if David's an Ephrathite, then he's the son of Rachel, who inherited the land from Genesis 48 during the Abrahamic covenant. So he would be Ephraim too. They crowned the override. So the person that stole the scroll would be Judah, and they crowned them. I don't say that this is peasantry, Judah. This is priesthood, Judah. Judah mixed with Esau. Caleb, looking at you. This is Judah mixed with the Levite priesthood. This is the Babylonian janky-ass bloodlines and priesthood coming back from Persia, pretending that they're Judah, but they're not really Judah, okay? So that's the override, all right? But the peasantry Judah, they're lost just as much as the other 10 tribes in the north, okay? So your peasantry Judah and your priesthood politician Judah, two different Judahs. The only legit Judah is the peasantry, and those aren't your Levite priesthood that's in charge, post-Babylon called Jews. Different group of people. All right. Then they buried all of the prophets who said, Ephraim's my firstborn. Ephraim's coming back. Ephraim. Forget that. Forget that. Every single prophet that prophesies the return of Ephraim in the latter days, we're just going to throw them aside because Psalm 78 says so. So now we're going to throw out Genesis 48. We're going to reinterpret Genesis 49 as literal and misassign who the lion and the cub are. Let them rule the world and throw out all the prophets too. Then we're going to make everybody Judah and just go on from there. That's what they did. They erased the entire fucking Old Testament because of Psalm 78. And I hope you'll see that by the time we're done today. Then they called it scripture, this mess of a psalm, and told you to sing about it in church and praise Judah. They didn't preserve this scroll, guys. They weaponized it against you. And I hope that I just start to prove that today, because we actually have a 3-video series just for the mess that they've made of this psalm. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and read it. And I'm going to share this tab instead. And we're just going to read straight through. And then we're going to take it chunk by chunk and piece by piece, nice and slow, and go through some of the more important things. Everything's important. If I did every line of this scroll, guys, we would be here for a year. So we're going to do some highlights and keep it moving. And it's still going to take us 3 sessions of God only knows how long. So this is Psalm 78. And I've got it here in the English Standard Version. But whatever version you have, good enough, pull up your Bibles. And let's read. Remember, I've always said that these things here, like tell the coming generation, these are not biblical, guys. These are titles and subtitles that are put in along with all of the numbering because they think you're a dumbass and they want to tell you what to think before you actually read and figure out what to think. They set you up this way. We see a lot of this with Paul. I'm like, Paul's accepted by the apostles. And then like the whole paragraph or chapters about him like bitching about the apostles. It's really, or they're sending his ass back to Tarsus. It's really funny how they do these titles that don't actually match what's going on in the text. That's a neurolinguistic programming piece where they're telling you what to think before you read it. But these are not biblical. All right, this is a maskil of Asaph, because he's an ass. And we're going to take a look at little A, footnote, because we're good Bible readers. And we're going to come down here, and we're going to see what A says. Oh, A. You guys see that? Probably a musical or liturgical term. You think so? You think so? You guys think that's what it is? Probably. It's probably just a musical thing. Pay no attention to that word. Don't worry about it. We're just going to move right along. Yeah, not so much. You know my tricks by now, don't you? All right, we'll get back to that one. Give ear, oh my people, to my teaching. Excuse me? Who's teaching? Is this God speaking? No, it isn't. This is Asaph speaking. Sounds very Pauline, doesn't it? Give ear to my teaching. He doesn't say he was sent by God. He didn't say God told me to tell you. This is just his teaching. breach point number 1, but we're going to keep going. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth, not God's mouth, not the prophet's mouth, this ass guy's mouth. All right. I will open my mouth in a parable. This is actually used by, oh gosh, this is used by Matthew. Matthew quotes back to this. Guys, I don't like the book of Matthew. We're just going to be clear. I've hinted to it 100 times, but let me tell you why. Your scholars are going to tell you, this is another perfect example of Matthew's dipshittery. Here's what your scholars say. Well, Matthew is the most quote unquote Jewish of all the gospels. Yeah, if Jewish is lying through their teeth, maybe. Well, it's the most Hebrew. Oh, really? Well, Hebrew is not a language. Hebrew is a people group, first of all. Okay? So we're not talking about language there. You're talking about a covenant people group. And it's only Hebrew if your Hebrews had no idea what a Davidic covenant was, because all of Matthew's references back to so-called prophecy are so ridiculous, out of context. It might be Hebrew if the Hebrew was really drunk, like at Caligula's party, and didn't know what the hell they were talking about, okay? Because it's very Roman. It's like a bunch of drunken Romans sat down, got a hold of the Old Testament, and like, where can we pull some shit out? Like, that's what it was. And they were hammered, and they have no idea what they're talking about. And every single prophecy they point back to just falls apart because it's ridiculous. Like, they don't even read the next sentence. So there's Matthew for you. You can excuse Matthew because he uses a lot of hyperbole, or you can just call it what it is. Matthew's got a lot of BS in there, guys. And that's why we're not reading Matthew right now, unless we do a series on who the heck wrote Matthew. If you say it's Hebrew, I say it's a drunk Hebrew at a Caligula party, because it doesn't make sense, guys. It really doesn't. But supposedly, Matthew quoted this. I will open my mouth in a parable. And that proves that Jesus is who he is because he spoke in parables. All right. But did they read the next sentence? No, they did not. I will utter dark sayings from old. You see why Matthew screws it up every time? I will open my mouth in a parable, and I will utter dark sayings from old. Sure, that's Jesus. Things we have learned, heard, and known that our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, but tell to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord and his might and the wonders that he has done. Okay, we're with you so far. He established a testimony in Jacob. Strange choice of words, Mr. Asaph. I might have chosen the word covenant, but no, he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel. Okay, so right now, we're all the way back with Jacob and Israel, right? So the United Kingdom of David, all 12 sons, which he commanded our fathers to teach their children, that the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and arise and tell them to their children. So he's talking about the Sinai covenant, right? So they should set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. And they should not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation whose heart was not steadfast, whose spirit was not faithful to God. Oh, the Ephraimites. Here's where it starts. The Ephraimites, armed with the bow, turned back on the day of battle, those cowards. They did not keep God's covenant. I'd like to know what battle, because this is not at all remotely backed up by any kind of history. The only one of the 12 tribes that actually went over to spy out the promised land was Joshua, aka Yeshua, aka Jesus of the Old Testament, Joshua. And he was Ephraim lineage, bloodline. And it was just him and Caleb. And who is Caleb? Oh, Caleb's Judah. No. Caleb was a frickin' dude from Esau. That's who Caleb was. We'll get to him later. So he certainly didn't turn back. Ephraim didn't turn back in the day of battle when they were going to spy out the land. That's Joshua. Joshua's a mighty warrior, dude. So we're not talking about that, settling the land. There's no evidence that they turned back with the Assyrians. They fought like heck, but like, you're not going to beat the Assyrian army, this little pissant thing. So nobody knows what the heck he's talking about here. But I digress. Let's keep moving. They did not keep God's covenant. They, the Ephraimites, but refused to walk according to his law. They, who is they? They are the Ephraimites, forgot his works and the wonders that he had shown them. In the sight of their fathers, he performed wonders in the land of Egypt, in the fields of Zoan. He divided the sea and let them pass through it, and made the waters stand like a heap. In the daytime, he led them with a cloud, and all night with a fiery light. He split rocks in the wilderness and gave them a drink abundantly, as from the deep, and he made streams come out of the rock, and he caused waters to flow down like rivers. Yet they sinned more against him. Now notice, with all of this accusation, they never changed subjects. Okay? And I know the Ephraim is often used as an epitaph or a nickname for the northern kingdom. But that's not what he's doing here. Okay? This isn't switching to northern kingdom Ephraim. This also isn't switching the subject anywhere to all of Israel. This is only talking about the Ephraimites. Only the Ephraimites. That's who they is. Sinned more against him. Rebelling against the Most High in the desert. Really? They, the Ephraimites, tested God in their heart by demanding the food they craved. The Ephraimites. They, the Ephraimites, same subject, still, spoke against God, saying, "Can God spread a table in the wilderness? He struck the rocks, that water gushed out and streams overflowed. Can he also give bread to provide meat for his people?" Therefore, when the Lord heard, he was full of wrath. A fire was kindled against Jacob, and his anger rose against Israel. This is the first time the subject changes from just Ephraim tribe to now all of Jacob Israel. So what's going on here is all of Jacob Israel is getting punished by God's wrath because of what Ephraim alone did. They're blaming Ephraim all the way back to Moses. And that's why Jacob Israel was punished. Do you see that? Do you see that? All this shit in the desert, that wasn't us. That was Ephraim. And God was full of wrath. I don't know whose God that is. James says every good thing comes from God. Every good gift comes from above, from the Father of lights. I remember Jesus saying, "I don't know who your God is, but that ain't mine." This is a wrathful, evil, vengeance-filled God acting out against the covenant people, Ephraim. Does that sound right to you? Doesn't sound right to me. And I'm punishing all of Jacob Israel with this God's wrath because of the covenant people of God. Because they didn't believe in God. They didn't trust his saving power. Yet, he commanded the skies above and opened the doors of heaven. He rained down on the manna to eat and gave them the grain of heaven. Man ate of the bread of the angels. He sent them food in abundance. He caused the east wind to blow in the heavens, and by his power he led out the south wind. He rained meat on them like dust, winged birds like the sand of the seas. He let them fall in the midst of their camp and around their dwellings, and they ate and were filled, for he gave them what they craved. But before they had satisfied their craving, while the food was still in their mouths, the anger of God rose against them, and he killed. Who did he kill? The strongest of them. This is the road trip from hell in Exodus, right? When they're out in the desert for 40 years, wandering around with Moses, they can't get their shit together. And they're claiming that he killed the strongest of them and laid low the young men of Israel. And why is God doing all of this? Because of them, Ephraim, the wicked tribe. You know, the one with the Abrahamic covenant. The one with the Davidic covenant. Those guys. But in spite of all this, they still sinned. Despite his wonders, they didn't believe. So he made their days vanish like a breath, and their years until, we know about the breath. We know about that ritual called breath, don't we? Yes, we do. And their years in terror. When he killed them, they sought him. So those assholes, they didn't seek God until he killed them. Then they figured it out. They needed some tough love. They repented and sought God earnestly. They remembered that God was their rock, the most high God, and their redeemer. But they flattered him with their mouths. They lied to him with their tongues. Their heart was not steadfast towards him. They were not faithful to his covenant. Yet he, being compassionate, atoned for their iniquity. He didn't destroy them. He restrained his anger often and did not stir up all his wrath. He remembered that they were but flesh, a wind that passes and comes not again. How often they rebelled against him in the wilderness and grieved him in that desert. They tested God again and again and provoked the Holy One of Israel. They didn't remember his power. This power word is also, it kind of means hand, like they didn't remember his bitch slap, his backhand. Or the day when he redeemed them from the foe, when he performed his signs in Egypt and his marvels in the fields of Zoan. He turned their rivers to blood so they could not drink of their streams. He sent among them swarms of flies, which devoured them, and frogs, which destroyed them. He gave their crops to the destroying locusts and the fruit of their labor to the locust. He destroyed their vines with hail and their sycamores with frost. He gave over their cattle to the hail and their flocks to the thunderbolts. He let loose their flocks to the thunderbolts. He let loose on them his burning anger, wrath, indignation, and distress. A company of destroying angels. He made a path for his anger. He didn't spare them from death, but gave their lives over to the plague. He struck down every firstborn in Egypt, the first fruits of their strength, in the tents of Ham. Then he led out his people like sheep and guided them into the wilderness like a flock. He led them in safety, so they were not afraid, but the sea overwhelmed their enemies. He brought them to his holy land, to the mountain which is his right hand, the mountain which his right hand had won. He drove out nations before them. He apportioned them for a possession and settled the tribes of Israel in their tents. Yet they tested and rebelled against the Most High God and did not keep his testimonies, but turned away and acted treacherously like their fathers. They twisted like a deceitful bow, for they provoked him to anger with their high places. They moved him to jealousy with their idols. When God heard, he was full of wrath, and he utterly rejected Israel. He forsook his dwelling at Shiloh. Now they're talking about northern kingdom Israel here. So somehow, we're like just moving right along in the desert with Moses. And then all of a sudden we're all the way at Shiloh, rejecting the northern kingdom. We just fast forwarded right through a bunch of shit. The tent where he dwelt among mankind and delivered his power to captivity, his glory to the land of the foe. He gave his people over to the sword, invented his wrath on his heritage. God took out his wrath on his own covenant people. Fire devoured their young men, and their young women had no marriage song. The priests fell by the sword, their widows made no lamentation. The Lord awoke as from sleep, like a strong man shouting because of wine. So God's acting drunk now. He put his adversaries to rout. He put them to everlasting shame. What's interesting here is, who are they talking about here? What are they talking about here? Who did he reject? Israel and Shiloh. So this is all about the northern kingdom. It's the people of his own heritage, northern kingdom. He put his adversaries out. This psalm is calling Ephraim and northern kingdom Israel God's adversary. This is not like a Philistine army. There is nothing in here that talks about external breaching or external enemies. This is directly talking about the people of Israel at Shiloh or Ephraim. And this psalm is calling them his adversaries. And he put them to everlasting shame. Uh-oh. He rejected the tent of Joseph. He did not choose the tribe of Ephraim, but he chose the tribe of Judah, Mount Zion, which he loves. He built a sanctuary like the high heavens, like the earth, which he has founded forever. He chose David, his servant. Well, I guess David must be tribe of Judah, since he chose Judah and he chose David, right? That's what they want you to believe. And they took him from the sheepfolds, from following the nursing ewes, and brought him to shepherd Jacob, his people. Israel, his inheritance. Whoa, wait, Judah. Hold on, Judah. You just said he put them to everlasting shame. You just said that they were utterly rejected. So I guess down here, since he chose Judah, Israel is now Judah. They rejected Ephraim. They rejected the northern kingdom. God rejected them and called them his adversary. And then he chose Judah. And this is where Jacob's people became Israel. So now Judah and Israel are the same thing, at least in this psalm. At least in this psalm. And with upright heart, he shepherded them and guided them with his skillful hand. Oh, this is a psalm that all your rabbis and Christians and scholars point to prove that Ephraim was erased. Ephraim was kicked out. Ephraim's not in the list of tribes in Revelation because God threw them out and rejected him permanently because they fucked up so badly. That's the story, and they're sticking to it. We're going to go ahead and take a look at that story. See if it holds up under audit. Okay, let me see. We're going to go over here, and we're going to share this tab instead. Okay, if you remember, we started at a maskil of ass. And I kind of touched on a few things here, but the places in green are the ones that I really want to focus your attention. I will open my mouth in a parable, and I will utter dark sayings of old. Okay, let's start. First of all, who is this Asaph guy? Well, As was a Levitical. Oh, there's those Levites again. Musician and seer. Supposedly, he worked in the courts of David and Solomon, supposedly. But he's not just a singer. He's called a prophet in Second Chronicles. He's a visionary. Brilliant. His name is attached to multiple Psalms, not just Psalm 78, but 50 in all of 73 to 83. Here's the problem. They claim he is a scroll-backed musician prophet, not just a harp guy. The problem is he comes out of nowhere. He's not mentioned in Samuel or Kings. He's only mentioned in Chronicles. And if you've been on this channel, you know the problem with Chronicles. Chronicles was written by post-Babylon, Jewish, Levite, priesthoods in the 500s. That's the problem with Chronicles. Go look up Chronicles. Go to the book. We talk about Chronicles. Chronicles was written to rewrite all the shit in Samuel, Kings, rewrite the genealogies, make it Judah-centric, slap their name on it, and call it history. That's what they did when they came back from Babylon. That is the Babylonian Persian elite priesthood coming back from exile. That's their book. That's not the book of David in the Hebrews. That's not the book Jesus was using. Okay. Chronicles is a political PR stunt. So we better look to see if this ass guy shows up anywhere else other than Chronicles. Oh, guess what? He doesn't. They made him up. The post-Babylonian priesthood of Levites in janky, not Judah bloodlines, because they're Esau, came back, the politicians and priesthood from Persia, and wrote Chronicles. Let's do it our way. They tacked themselves to Judah, totally overriding the Judah peasantry. They erased Ephraim. They jankified the genealogies, and they're like, yeah, David's Judah, and we're Judah. Good enough. Follow our laws now. And, that eventually led to your Levite priesthood that Jesus fought against. That's who wrote Chronicles. So basically, go ask the scholars. Go find them. They'll tell you the same story, guys. Do your own homework. But we don't pay attention to Chronicles unless we're using it to prove them wrong because they're liars. And Chronicles is very messy. How they janky the genealogies, and there's a whole bunch of janky shit in there, and nothing matches. Welcome to Chronicles. So that's who that is. He's this mysterious guy who just shows up in Chronicles and happens to write these Psalms that reversed the entire Abrahamic covenant throughout the entire northern kingdom, called Ephraim God's adversary. And everybody just goes with it. And Judah's, it's fine, it's Judah now. That's what Psalm 78 did. So, what is a maskil? Remember I told you that word? They're like, probably something to do with music. Yeah, no. Maskil comes from a Hebrew root word, and that root word means to have insight or to teach. This is an instructional psalm, okay? It's not a praising psalm. It's not a lamenting psalm. This is for specific instruction. Okay, you're going to school here on this. This isn't just a feel-good history recap. This word signifies it's a coded indictment scroll. It is designed to instruct, warn, and expose. Okay, this is not poetic fluff. Let's get that clear. So what the fuck is this dark parable language? At the beginning, I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old. Well, a parable is like a metaphor, an allegory, right? It's like it's coded teaching. We see Jesus do these all the time. Dark sayings are riddles, concealed or hidden, like hidden in the darkness, encrypted truths. This is not a poetic introduction, guys. This is a ritual declaration that what's following isn't necessarily literal history, but an encrypted riddle wrapped in storytelling. So this is an encrypted breach map. It's exposing, hey guys, listen up. This is how we're going to steal the covenant. That's what it's saying. This is how we're going to possess that covenant. Pass it down. Pass it along. That's what that says. Now, interestingly, this dark sayings word in the Greek, okay, enigmata, this is only used in 1 Corinthians 13:12. Paul is the only person that uses the same Greek word in the entire New Testament. And he only uses it in this statement. For now we see through glass, darkly, but then face to face. What he's doing is he's using this word in 1 Corinthians 13. He's using this word to say, there are mysteries of the Old Testament. Okay. He's implying that, the covenant, the ways of God of the Old Testament are mysterious, but I have the real story now. He's implying that it's too riddled for you to understand. It needs his special logos, enlightenment gospel to unlock these mysteries. That's how Paul's using this same word. So there's something hidden, wink, wink. And this we're gonna riddle it in there so you can figure it out. Same word as Psalm 78. So they're calling this an override of the scroll. They're using this to override the covenant. Babylon uses it to override Ephraim in covenant and take that covenant from him. Typical Esau behavior, fake Judah. Looking at you, rabbis. Paul uses it to fog Jesus renewing the new covenant and pointing to the logos. Do you see that? This word is used when they're overriding the original covenant with something else and calling it a coded mystery. True story, guys. Do you think it's a magical coincidence that word is used in Psalm 78? And the only place it shows up in the whole New Testament is with Paul, talking about his mystery gospel and how he's got it figured out now. Because the Greek Old Testament translates this idea. And then Paul uses the same concept. He doesn't quote the verse. You wouldn't know it's there unless you know Greek. He's not quoting Psalm 78. He's just using the concept of this hidden secret knowledge and reframes the use of it, the same word, to justify his new mysterious gospel fog. So Babylon's priesthood uses this linguistic trick to ritually declare Ephraim and their scroll covenant obsolete. I don't think it's a coincidence. Just saying. So Paul didn't just choose a rare word. He ritually reframed the scroll and the covenant as encrypted fog to justify his new Hellenized logos theology. That's what he did. But I digress. Just thought it was interesting to throw it in here. So what do we have so far? Well, if you read it actually in order and you look at the structure, we're reading specialists over here. We like to look at structure, text structure. And if you look at the text structure, we've got a maskil format. So it's not a praise song. It's a teaching indictment. You're just instructing through ritual exposure. So I want you guys to think courtroom, not worship. Okay. In the dark sayings of old, well, this is a ritual secret, a ritual encryption, not just a metaphor. Babylon is using this word to cloak. It's taking possession of the scroll, and it's making it look like wisdom. All right. Next, he established a testimony in Jacob, and then we go on down. Nothing really here to point out. Just going through the history here. Nothing I particular. There's plenty to point out here, but nothing I'm going to stop for now. But we're blaming the Ephraimites who did not keep God's covenant. Just them, nobody else. Well, Judah, I got some news for you. In the daytime, he led him with a cloud. At night, with a fiery light, caused water to flow down like rivers. But yet they, the Ephraimites, still sinned more. Just them, nobody else. Just them. They spoke against God. They tested God in their heart. God was full of wrath. He killed the strongest of them. Well, the first thing we're going to do with this little piece, okay, keep all that in mind, all my green marks. Keep that in mind. Judah, I've got some news for you. This won't work. It's not just Ephraim. So let's take a look at the Desert Purge events linked to this priesthood breach. Because everyone, surprise, surprise, everyone that got killed in the desert road trip from hell, every single time, it was linked to the freaking priesthood. So when this says he killed the strongest of them, no, he killed the priesthood and everybody aligned with the janky ass priesthood. That's what it was. The golden calf event, Aaron builds the idol and leads the ritual. Leviticus 10, unauthorized fire in the tabernacle. That was sons of Aaron. Korah's rebellion in number 16. The Levites challenged Moses' authority. 250 priesthood elites were incinerated. Uh-oh. We have the quail plague in Numbers 11, where the elders demanded meat. Wait a minute. The elders demanded meat. Didn't we just read somewhere in Psalm 78 that they blamed Ephraim for demanding the meat? Do you remember that? I remember that. Where is that? They demanded meat from God, those darn Ephraim people. Let's find out where that is. I'm scrolling, guys. I'm sorry. I'm in another place, and I'm scrolling because I forgot where it was. But I know we read that they were looking for meat. Only Ephraim, though. Not the priesthood that asks for animal sacrifice so they can eat in their temple. No, not them. They didn't want meat. It was just Ephraim wanted meat. Here, let me show this tab instead. Let me see. Let's do a little control F-age here. And we're going to look for meat. Oh, here we go. There it is. Right in line 20. Yet they, who is they? They is Ephraim, those Ephraimites. Can he also give bread or provide meat for his people? Uh-oh. Sorry, not sorry. But usually it's the priesthood that's begging for meat. That's why they have sacrifices, guys. The priesthood's fattening themselves up by eating the food. But this says, you know, the priesthood class was targeted. So the strongest among them has nothing to do with Ephraim being killed in the desert. It was the freaking Levites. Aaron's rod test. Priesthood legitimacy we also question. God forces a showdown. Oh. Waters of Meribah, Numbers 20. Priesthood breach protocol. Moses barge entering the land. Baal Peor incident, Numbers 25. The priests failed to stop sexual idolatry. Imagine that. And 24,000 died of plague. You know what? Seems to me like any desert purge that we're having here, guys, was a priesthood failure, not random rebellion of Ephraim. Try again, priests. But in spite of all this, Ephraim still sinned. Ephraim did not believe. When he killed them, they sought them. They flattered him. They lied to him. All of it blaming Ephraim. Sorry, Judah. We got another thing coming. Here is part 1 of Southern Kingdom, Judah and Benjamin, of all their child sacrifice and false worship. These verses, guys, explicitly target the Southern Kingdom of Judah, not northern tribes of northern Israel. These are only your southern Judah people. We've got 2 Kings. King Ahaz made his son pass through the fire. That would be child sacrifice. They try to make this guy look like a hero, though. But no, child sacrifice. Same event in Chronicles. 2 Kings. King Manasseh. Excuse me? We have a King Manasseh of Judah. Do you think Judah lineage, bloodline, would name one of their sons Manasseh? Who's sons of Joseph, who got the Abrahamic covenant? Does that seem right to you? Who the hell of Rachel's sons in Judah, knowing how evil, knowing that God, what did God do? Let's remember what God do. Let's remember God rejected the tent of Joseph, didn't he? Yeah, God rejected the tent of Joseph. That's what it says right here. He rejected the tent of Joseph. He did not choose the tribe of Ephraim. Well, Judah, then what in the hell are you doing naming your kids after the tribe of Joseph? You're not. You're lying. King Manasseh, well, he was an asshole for sure. King Manasseh was an asshole, okay? And he did child sacrifice. He fucked it up. But he wasn't from Judah. But supposedly, King Manasseh of Judah sacrificed his son, practiced witchcraft, and consulted mediums. You want him, Judah, you got him. Manasseh again, child sacrifice. Judah built high places. In Topeth. High places are where you go to burn your sons and daughters in child sacrifice. Judah, looking at you. In Jeremiah, Judah filled Jerusalem with innocent blood and burned children to Baal. And Isaiah accuses Judah and says they're inflamed with idolatry, slaughtered children under trees and in ravines. In Ezekiel, Judah in Jerusalem sacrificed sons and daughters to idols, passed them through the fire. And in 2 Kings, Josiah defiled Topeth to stop child sacrifice in Judah. So excuse me, Judah, you claim that Ephraim worshiped the wrong God and God's wrath came upon them and he cut them off and he chose Judah because they're so great? Excuse me? Why would God cut off the tent of Joseph and the tent of Ephraim? And then Judah names one of their kings Manasseh about the tent of Joseph. And then Judah runs around through the whole entire Old Testament doing child sacrifice. And God didn't reject them. They must be the good sons, huh? That's their story, and they're sticking to it, guys. It's bullshit. Their heart, Ephraim's heart, was not steadfast. They were not faithful. They didn't remember his power, his backhand, and his marvels in the fields of Zoan. That fields of Zoan, we're going to get to that. We're going to stop right there and keep moving. This is the plains of Egypt and the land of Zoan. And this is geographic symbolism, and it's really important. So we're going to stop there, and then we'll go back to that slide again. But these plains of Egypt, this is kind of a waffle zone again, like we talked about in Damascus, or a threshold between captivity and covenant. Okay. So it's not just literal geography, although it is. It's a staging ground, okay, for possession, inversion, and deliverance. Babylon calls this a place of miracles, but it's actually where Amun-Ra's cosmology gets embedded. Yeah, we said the sun god Re. Remember them? Remember him from Meet Bile series with the little eye thing? We have the eye of Horus and the eye of Ra, or the eye of Re, or whatever the hell it is, the sun god stuff. Yeah. Well, this whole Amun-Ra thing in the plains of Egypt, right in this area where all this is going on, the plagues are coming, all that is ritual language with sun god worship and links right in. Okay. This was a possession prep zone. And we'll get back to this, or maybe we'll do it now. This whole idea of the Amun was the hidden one, the hidden hand, the most powerful god, if you will. And this god is invisible, unknowable, self-created. Okay. This is what mirrors Philo's concept of the Logos, also developed in Egypt, that Paul mutates and brings out later in the New Testament. Okay. So there's this Logos character that has to come in and mediate between this hidden, all-powerful, non-created being God. Okay. He's distant from the people. So we need this mediator God, aka God the Son, that you can know him. So you'll be able to know God through him. Okay. And this is a divine mystery. And then we have Re, who's your solar creator. This is your viable, radiant giver of life, if you will. Philos fuses this Amun-Ra thing, this hidden god and creator god, if you will. He fuses all of this Egyptian ancient sun god shit with Greek Hellenized thought that comes out of Philo of Alexandria, Egypt, centuries later. And he's calling it, this Logos is the light, reason, and divine emanation. So Paul inherits all of this and attaches the idea of this hidden one and solar creator, this Amun and this Re, takes Philo's idea about this as Logos being the light, calls Jesus the Logos, slaps Jesus' name onto it, and makes Jesus this magical Re solar creator entity. Does that make sense? This is how we get there to Paul's Logos theory right here. And that's in Egypt, from the plains of Egypt, coming out in Psalm 78. Okay. So Paul has a little paper trail behind him. He's quoting Philos of Alexandria, who was a contemporary of Paul. You know, he was a first century Hellenized Jewish philosopher from Alexandria, Egypt, pushing this Hellenized Jewish Logos theory. And so Paul's quoting Philo and this whole mindset of the Hellenized Jews without actually saying this comes from Philo. Does that make sense? But it was Philo of Alexandria, Egypt. And this all comes way back. If you go before Philo's Logos, you know, Amun-Ra was the prototype for this exact thing, the Father and the Son, the unknowable God and the knowable God, right? The Almighty and the Creator God, the demiurge, the dualistic thing is coming into play here. So Paul's quoting the image of the invisible God. Well, that invisible God in Colossians is the Amun. And then the light of the world, who is visible and knowable, is your Re, your sun God. So Paul's using this Amun-Ra thing throughout Colossians and Corinthians. And in him, all things hold together. That's Logos. This is this ancient Egyptian ritualistic, false pagan god cosmology. Okay, that goes all the way back and is encoded in Babylon's ass guy writing Psalm 78. Okay. That's also, that's just another rabbit trail. So that's what this signs in Egypt and the marvels in the fields of Zoan. And then he goes through all this. And, he's talking about the plagues here. But, and you can relate this to the plagues. He's got, the flies, the frogs, and the locusts and all that stuff, right? With Egypt. And there's a whole big thing about plagues in Egypt. And we have not even remotely gotten there yet. So there's a bunch of stuff going on here with the plagues of Egypt. And we're not actually doing a whole thing on the plagues right now. But we are going to touch upon a little bit more of this ritual language here that also fits in with the plagues and fits into all the stuff I just told you. All right. So we've got our crops destroying the fruit, the vines with hail, the sycamores with frost, cattle to the hail, flocks to thunderbolts. He let loose on them his burning anger, wrath, indignation, distress, and a company of destroying angels. Okay. Guys, God, let's put it this way. First of all, Jesus's Father doesn't send out companies, legions of destroying angels. You got the wrong God, first of all, okay? God does not send legions of destructive angels. That's the first thing. So whatever's going on over there in Egypt with these plagues, it's not destroying angels sent from Jesus's Father. Let's get that clear. All right, but let's look at this ritual language. Why is all of this here? I just want you to know. Now, I'm not saying that God would not destroy false gods, right? With plagues and things like that and battling with false gods. I'm not saying that. Like, God's a badass. Don't get it twisted. It's just the ritual language that is used and recalled in this psalm. I want you to remember, Judah suffers with the question of which God are we doing all this for? Okay? Because all of your ancient false pagan gods are all playing the game of what's that old game show like from the 70s? I'm showing my age. I was a little girl in the 70s. And it was like, will the real so-and-so please stand up? Right? There's like an identity crisis going on with these gods. And they're all claiming to be the God, but they're not. Does that make sense? So just please remember when you're reading this ritualized language throughout the Old Testament, not only did the priesthood erase all the words to let us know which God is which, we've also got these false gods pretending that they're God. So we always have to really audit this. And we go with the fruit protocol. Good fruit, God. Bad fruit, not God, right? So just know that the God in Psalm 78 doesn't sound like it's the covenant father of Jesus. Just saying. The psalm uses the words both Elohim and El Elyon. And these are terms that were jankified post Babylon again. So after the exile, priesthood texts merge with covenant source scrolls. And they merged all this with Babylonian storm gods. So sometimes what looks like divine judgment is a Babylonian identity crisis god, right? That's claiming to do the work of the real God. Or sometimes it's just a Babylonian god and the priesthood changed the name to be the other god. So they're mixing a whole bunch of shit in here, okay? Just always know that. In Paul's case, we're slowly showing that it wasn't Jesus that he met in the wilderness, right? That light show in the desert, that would be a possession, ritual possession, masquerading as holiness. That's what these gods do. So all this wrath against his own covenant people does not sound like Jesus's father, written in by the Babylonian priesthood after 500 BC, just saying. So just be very careful that not all references to God means that it's a scroll back divine source. Babylon corrupted the names. Just know that. Okay. And their janky ass gods claim to be the real God. Okay. So that's important. Because in lines 42 to 51, what you're actually seeing is this ritual inversion and occult symbolism tied to the retelling of the plagues of Egypt. Okay? They didn't remember his power. This sets up that ritual amnesia, which is a classic possession tactic. Forgetting his breach vulnerability. And Babylon is going to use this to justify. Ephraim forgot, so Judah took over. That's their logic. Okay, this is not a poetic lament. They're setting up to justify taking the covenant. In verses 43 and 44, these signs in Egypt, the rivers turning to blood. That's life, covenant, and purity. Blood is your chaos. Your water is chaos. And we're doing chaos, ritual inversion, and death here. We're turning the rivers to blood, which is the occult reversal of the Genesis water order, right? It mirrors this Amun-Ra cosmology where creation emerges, where chaos waters once flowed. So we're right back to Genesis with the janky gods pretending to be the real God and calming the chaos. Remember that? God's like, no, that was me. So this is another mistaken identity. In verse 44, in Hebrew, it's interesting the word that's used here. Okay. Yours, the Nile River, but it's also used for those primordial water elements that we talked about in Egyptian cosmology. Okay. Blood is also a ritual death marker. It's not just a plague. It's a chaos inversion of covenant waters. Okay. Frogs and the flies. You can see this breakdown in Hebrew. The frogs are your liminal gatekeepers, okay? Often translated as a swarm or flies or swarming deities. Okay, this is mixing and mingling and a convergence of entities, but in a frenzy, if you will. These are astral gates, astral possession gates, astral attack. Okay? You also see this in the Greek, but interestingly, the Greek actually pumps up the Hebrew. So if you're one that believes that the Hebrew came first, well, the Greek took your Hebrew and made it even more ritual possession language. The Greek's even worse. Let's just put it that way. Potamos is river, but it's used in Greek mystery texts as astral channels. The blood is a sacrificial breach marker. So this is an astral conduit and a ritual bloodline breach. Verse 44, we got the frogs and the flies again. Okay. These are again liminal creatures, and they're tied to the gates of Hecate, goddess, god, goddess, whatever. We've got the dog fly. These are decaying spirits linked to rituals of necromancy. There's a lot of things going on here. We've got guardians at the gate. We've got a death swarm, if you will. We've got ritual blood markers. And we've got astral channels, all coded into this Greek ritual language here. That's supposedly a retell of the plagues of Egypt. Okay. This one, verse 49, is the most occult coded language of this entire psalm. And this is this God's hot anger, sending a quote unquote band of destroying angels Well, these destroying angels are actually your ritual death spirits. This is mirroring your Egyptian death procession. And Psalm 78 is attributing this or cursing this onto Ephraim as if it's, I don't know, what they deserve. Divine justice, God's acting out on Ephraim, or God's acting out on Israel because of what Ephraim did. They didn't pay attention to when he did all this to Egypt. So God turned his wrath on them. You see this? This is actually an astral breach protocol, you guys. Comparing the wrath of God in these ritual Egyptian things and blaming Ephraim for this piece and saying, remember when God did all this? Well, then they turn the wrath on us because of Ephraim. That's what they're doing. Path for anger, death of firstborn. Path for his anger, these words mean ritual channeling, a ritual channel, that astral channel we talked about, same thing. Death of the firstborn would be a bloodline breach, not just punishment. So all of this divine justice was taken out on Egypt and their false gods, right? With all this ritual language coded for all of the false gods. But then the psalmist saying, then because of Ephraim, he turned all this wrath on us. It's a bloodline breach. So it's kind of mirroring the Egyptian punishment with the Ephraim punishment, because it doesn't say they cut off Egypt in the end. It says they cut off Ephraim in the end. And it's all their fault. He sent against them the fury of anger, a band of evil angels. Yeah. These this band in the Greek, this band of evil angels, we're going to look at it again in the Greek. And it's used in this Greek magical papyri. And these spirits and these magical Greek papyrus papers that we've looked at before with this ritual magic that comes out of Egypt, right? Usually coming out of Egypt again. It's describing these summoning spirits, okay? These aren't just like, God sent some badasses down to take care of business. These are evil angels. These are the enemy. This is Hasatan's army. This isn't metaphorical. These are ritual enforcers of the false gods. Okay? He made a way for his anger. This is that ritual breach gate, this astral gate, this dimensional gate that we're passing through. Okay? It's this force of possession, this pneuma, possession wind, or gay. Astral gates, possession. This is all false god language talking about that Egypt protocol. That's soon to be turned on Israel because of Ephraim. Okay. So this ritual stuff, it's all talking about astral gates, possession winds, ritual deployments of evil angels, and bloodline breaches. This is ritual architecture that they're putting in here. So this ritual punishment, right, that's happening within Egypt as he's retelling this story mirrors this idea of pagan death cosmology. Water's turning to blood, frogs, flies, hail, fire. This is entity manifestations. Band of destroying angels are ritual death spirits. This isn't correcting a covenant, guys. This is astral enforcers. Okay? Not covenant discipline. So the Babylonian priesthood wrote this all in there to justify their own authority. It was written after the split of the tribes, north and south, when they were living under Persian oversight. So this is post-Babylon. Not only does it smear Ephraim using ritual language from those plagues of Egypt, but it glamours Judah and uses this idea of ritual punishment to crown the priesthood. Does that make sense? So the God punishing Israel is this Babylonian hybrid deity, not the scroll back father of the Davidic heirs. They didn't recount history. They rerouted the scroll using ritual magic language applied to Egypt and then turning it around and throwing it onto Ephraim. Guys, the covenant father doesn't operate like this. This is not Jesus's dad handing the covenant in this way to Judah. The Davidic heir, the Messiah, he rebukes temple sacrifice. Jesus completely rejects all Levitical blood rituals. He calls out possession logic. We're getting there in Luke. Revelation explicitly condemns eating these food sacrificed to idols, which Paul glamours as okay. The covenant father doesn't just send bands of destroying angels to enforce chaos because his heritage people turn against him. Okay? The Davidic heir is reversing these breaches, not enforcing them. He brought them to his holy land, to the mountain his right hand won. No, up here, yeah, no, they are talking about Egypt, but you're going to see it changes onto Ephraim, all this language. But he brought him to this mountain, which his right hand won. And I'm like, what? Why does God's right hand need to win anything? It doesn't. It's all God's. So what's funny about this is we're going to go back here, right? He let loose on them in his burning anger. We're talking all about Egypt, right? And the plagues of Egypt and all this ritual language, okay? And then he led his people out like sheep. He guided them in the wilderness like a flock. So we're on the road trip from hell with Moses in the wilderness. He led them in safety so they're not afraid. The sea overwhelmed their enemies. That would be the Red Sea crossing, right? And then forget everything that happened in the desert. Suddenly we fast forward. He brought them to totally out of the mountain, which is right-handed one. Well, when I read that, I'm reading, he brought them to his holy land, to the mountain. Well, which mountain? They just crossed the Red Sea. Which mountain is this? Well, Mount Sinai, of course. No. Not according to your scholars and rabbis. That's wrong. This is not the mountain that shows up right after he crosses the Red Sea. No. This is the mountain many hundreds of years later, called Jerusalem. Of course it's Jerusalem. This is where they swap Mount Sinai to Mount Zion. And I swear to you guys, your rabbis, your scholars, everyone's like, that wasn't Sinai. That's all the way hundreds of years later in Judah. It's ridiculous. Sinai's your covenant origin. Sinai's where the scroll was given out, right? It's the mountain of fire, mountain of instruction. But there's no glamored priesthood on that mountain. So that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about Zion. The mountain his right hand won. So who's his right hand? Oh, of course, that's going to be Judah. Commentaries. If you read a commentary about this, they're going to tell you that 78 refers to Zion and Jerusalem, not Sinai. And by the way, Zion isn't Jerusalem either, but we haven't gotten there yet. But Babylon corrupted it. So Zion is their chosen mountain, and it's tied directly to Judah's priesthood and all the temple infrastructure. So this is where they coronate God's mountain as theirs. Jerusalem, the mountain that he won. You guessed it. It's the theological duct tape they slapped on every single part to justify their own infrastructure. You guys, they didn't just rewrite history. They rerouted geography, bloodlines, covenant infrastructure into one zip code called Jerusalem. And it's all theirs now. If they're God, you can't have them. This is the trick we saw. Go back to our Ephraim series, where we pull up that PDF document and share how like everything in the whole Bible now becomes Jerusalem. Yeah, that's the Babylon's everything's Jerusalem protocol. Sinai, that's Jerusalem. Ephraim's registry, sorry, that's gone. Judah priesthood now. David is an Ephraimite lineage, sons of Rachel inheriting that land. Nope, that all goes to Judahite. David was Judah. The kingdom in a dimension right now unfolding. The kingdom is here. Nope, sorry, it's a future temple in Jerusalem. The Messiah, he's the son of David, but yeah, I'm sorry. Logos, Christ, entity, crowned in Jerusalem because he's Judah. Everything's Jerusalem now. Just everything's Jerusalem. No matter what. There's no covenant clarity. It's just the Jews. Everything goes to them now. Congratulations. It's funny. Yet they, Ephraim again, tested and rebelled against the Most High God. He provoked them with their high places. Their high places are where you sacrifice kids and do all your janky demon sex magic shit, like all that ritual stuff goes on the high places. But we just saw 2 whole pages of references where Judah was sacrificing kids. They moved into jealousy with their idols. Ding, ding, ding. So was Judah. He utterly, but you know what? We didn't care about Judah. They don't care that Judah was sacrificing children. We only care that Israel was. Because for some reason, he utterly rejected Israel and his dwelling at Shiloh. If you don't know where and what Shiloh is, go back to the Meet Ephraim series. We break that down. He did not reject Judah for burning their own babies 50 million times throughout the Bible and all of their idolatry. No, no, no. We only reject the northern kingdom. And Shiloh, never Jerusalem, never. God never does anything against Judah and Jerusalem. Just his other covenant people. Them we don't give a shit about. See how this works, guys? Now, how do you think that impacts people spiritually when your entire identity and spiritual covenants have been erased and you've been funneled into Rome? How's that working out? Ephraim, dipshits. Babylon's Psalm 78 endgame, which is dated to post-exile, is where they reject Shiloh and coronate this Mount Zion, calling it Jerusalem, but it isn't. Shiloh was Ephraim's center. Shiloh was the original location of the tabernacle. Shiloh was in Ephraim's territory, not Judah's. And it represented the pre-Babylonian priesthood covenant infrastructure. Bethel, Jacob, Shiloh. We did all this, guys, back in Meet Ephraim series. Go see that. But Babylon can't crown Judah until they ritually reject Shiloh. And that's exactly what they did. Shiloh, guys, was where that covenant was. Northern Kingdom. Bethel, Shiloh, Jacob puts down the rock, all that stuff. Go to Ephraim series. You'll see all that. But Babylon needed it erased. So, not only did we erase them, guess what else we did to Ephraim? Ephraim is now one of God's adversaries. And God put them to everlasting shame. So if you read this as a historical scholar who kisses the Jew's ass, or you read this as a rabbi who wants all the power and control, or a Jew that wants all the power and control, or you read this as Romans who kiss the Jew's ass, you're going to miss it. But if you read it like a person whose identity has been stolen because you lost your covenant, Ephraim, this psalm just finished rejecting Shiloh, smearing Ephraim, and crowning Judah. So who's left standing in opposition to Babylon's coronation? Just Ephraim, the northern tribes, the registry holders. But now they become adversaries to the new priesthood regime, not to God. Ephraim and the northern tribes are not adversaries to God. They're his people. They're dipshits, but they're not bigger dipshits than Judah. They're not bigger dipshits than anybody else. But suddenly, this Babylonian ass dude pops up, writes a scroll, reverses everything. And it's all Judah now because of this one fucking psalm. He puts God's people as their adversaries to everlasting shame. That's where we are. Guys, this is ritual erasure. In Hebrew, this means perpetual disgrace. This is a bloodline smear. This is spiritual exile. And Babylon uses exactly this phrase and exactly this psalm to ritually and systematically erase any opposition from the northern kingdom. This isn't about punishing your enemy. It's about erasing them. And who is their enemy? Their enemy is Ephraim. And all of this rejection comes next. But they forgot about the prophets. When they wrote and jankified and slapped together this Psalm 78 bullshit from Babylon, apparently they forgot about all the prophets in the Old Testament who affirm that no, Ephraim is not cut off. Before the exile, we have Hosea, Isaiah, Jeremiah, all pre-exile. Ephraim's breach. We know Ephraim are dipshits, but not bigger dipshits than Judah. There's no reason to just kick out Ephraim and nobody else. Promises restoration in Hosea 11. Judah was actually warned in Isaiah, and Ephraim's mentioned as part of the future unity in Isaiah 11. Ephraim is the dear son, not cut off in Jeremiah 31. We've got our infamous two sticks prophecy, and this is during the time of the Babylonian exile. And this is when Ephraim's restored with Judah. That's not all. Post-exile. Post-exile means they're already gone. We've got Zechariah. Ephraim the warrior is restored. Obadiah tells us focuses on Edom. There's no direct mention of Ephraim, but Edom's fucked. And guess who Edom is? Edom's Esau, who stole the fucking blessing because they called themselves Judah. That's who Edom is. Edom is teamed up with that lion, that Babylonian lion that ate Judah and pretends to be them. Joel, probably post-exile. He doesn't have any direct Ephraim reference either, but he does call for full restoration of the house. Haggai, post-exile, doesn't mention Ephraim. Malachi, post-exile. Judah's rebuked, but Ephraim is not mentioned. Post-exile. Pre-exile, they sure are. Then we've got Amos, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, and Zephaniah. We've got Ephraim judged, but restoration is coming. Judah's rebuked, but Ephraim's not cut off. Nahum is Assyria-focused, and Habakkuk is Judah-focused, but nothing specifically about Ephraim. Now, they do talk about Ephraim in context of Israel, like Ephraim being a nickname for Northern Kingdom. So they do talk about Northern Kingdom. They just don't use the term Ephraim. And Zephaniah is pre-exile, and, well, Judah's rebuked. But there's restoration of the remnant, which includes the northern tribes. You guys, Ephraim screwed up bad, but he wasn't erased. Babylon tried to erase him, but God doesn't work like that. But not only do we have prophets that talk about the restoration of Ephraim specifically, and northern Israel more broadly, we also have prophets who condemned Judah specifically, not only for child sacrifice, but for removing the bound. And a lot of people don't know what removing the bound means. But I want you to think of a boundary stone, right, that marks your property line. Well, you remove that bound, you're stealing property. Does that make sense? But it's not just property. It's inheritance. It's bloodline covenant land. It's identity. It's covenant identity. It's spiritual identity. So removing the bound is a big one, and it's a big no-no with God. He does not like removing the bounds. No, 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 no. And we've got prophets that explicitly bitch slap Judah, not Israel, for violating the bound, both spiritual, land-based, territorial, and genealogically. We've got Isaiah. Woe to those who join house to house. This is a land consolidation. Jeremiah, breaking ancestral covenants, warns them. They were violating land inheritance and praising the corrupt priesthood rituals. And they broke the scroll and sold the land. Micah, they covet fields and seize them. They oppress a man in his house, a man in his inheritance. This is a direct and explicit condemnation of Judah's land theft and covenant override. You brothers, they say, stay away from the Lord. This land has been given to us as a possession. This is Judah claiming exclusive rights. Ezekiel saying it's not yours, dudes. Zechariah, don't oppress the widow or the fatherless or plot evil against each other. They're still violating covenant ethics. Malachi, I will come near to you for judgment against those who defraud laborers of their wages. Judah's post-exile priesthood, still possessing things that don't belong to them. He didn't just remove the bound. He rerouted everything. So we've read through our psalm today. We've talked about this ass F guy who was made up and thrown into Chronicles just in time to write Psalm 78. We've got this weird Greek word about dark secrets that's only used by Paul in the New Testament. We looked at our covenant reroute. We asked ourselves, which God? Talked about removing the bound. What we haven't done yet is dated this scroll, seen what the scholars say about it. We haven't done our genealogy audit, which leads to Caleb and Joshua mess. And, well, your scholars are trying to tell you that, well, the Dead Sea Scrolls were the scenes, that's proof about this Judah stuff. So we're going to get you those the next time. But in the meantime, Ephraim, I want to leave you with this. When everything is rerouted and redone and thrown around, what's happened to, and I'm just going to say, Ephraim, Northern Israel, and you can argue about where those bloodlines went and who those people really are, and you can tune into channels and separate yourselves based on the color of your skin or your national origin. But the truth is, here's what it is. God used Ephraim's love of partying in pagan hoochie to spread that Abrahamic covenant seed all over to all the nations, right? And so you're not going to be able to pin down those bloodlines unless they're in very, very, very deep spiritual warfare since birth, because they know those bloodlines. But that's another occult lesson for another day. But everyone's welcome to the wedding. But you can't live in a way that's on the frequency of the Davidic covenant if your knowledge of who you are has been stripped. They didn't want humans to be sons of God. Does that make sense? They can't acknowledge a patriarchal, biological bloodline, because that is the literal definition of a divine monarchy. And all of these kingdoms and claims to these thrones all over the world collapse. You know, I mean, we learned in 5th grade, kings and queens have the right to rule. They're claiming to be, you know, divine monarchies. That's where the word comes from. No, the divine monarchy happened in Galilee with a small family that carries the DNA, the bloodline of a very specific, very small remnant people. And everything since that day has been stacked against you to take away your identity by taking away the king's identity. And once you erase the bloodline, you erase that covenant, you erase the inheritance, and you erase your identity as sons and daughters of God. And you're rerouted into blustering stacks of nonsense and bullshit. Ephraim, it's time to reclaim your inheritance.
Energy. Energy. You cannot fuck with this. Energy. You cannot fuck with this energy. Love to all those in the flesh, all of those who are listening. Don't miss the message, judging me. You cannot fuck with this energy.